A lot of people say that this is the worst era of UFC champions in terms of star power, but what you can't deny is that this is one of the best eras for overall skill. But as good as these champions may be, they cannot be champion forever. And that's why in this video, we're going to be going through each champion and how they lose their belt. Starting with Jon Jones, if you even want to call him a champion, he's going to lose his belt from retirement. That's how he's going to lose his belt. He's not going to fight Tom Aspinall. And to be honest, if he does fight Tom Aspinall, which I just don't think is going to happen, I think he would get knocked out in the first round. I think he's going to retire from the UFC. I don't think he wants anything to do with Tom Aspinall. And in not too long, maybe a few months, or hopefully not any longer, Jones will retire and Tom Aspinall will be the undisputed heavyweight champion, which brings us to Tom Aspinall. How does he lose his belt? And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know how he's going to lose his belt. The UFC heavyweight division absolutely sucks. It's all fat slobs. Other than like maybe Cyril Gane, you can consider him, somewhat high level. But the rest of the UFC heavyweight division is garbage. And I can't pick any of those heavyweights to beat a guy like Tom Aspinall, who's really the unicorn of the heavyweight division. And as long as the heavyweight division is how it is now, I'm just going to sit here and say, I don't know how he's going to lose his belt. Maybe it's just like some contender that comes up years later. But the featherweight champion Volkanovski, I think the way he loses his belt, call me a casual for this one, but I think it's Gene Silva. Here's the reason I say that. They're doing Volkanovski versus Yair, which is an absolute abomination. But the thing about that fight is it's going to stall Volk. Volk doesn't have much time left in the UFC. He's pushing 40. He's over 35 years old. Fighting Yair Rodriguez, maybe he sustains a little bit of injuries. Then who does he fight next? Probably Movsar. If he fights Movsar, even a year from now, I still think he'll be young enough and in kind of his prime enough to have a close fight and probably beat Movsar. But what happens after that? That's probably when you have Gene Silva, if he's still on his win streak. And Gene Silva, he has takedown defense. He has knockout power. He has clean hands. And especially the age that Volkanovski is going to be at when he fights Gene Silva, I would have to pick Gene Silva with the power that Gene Silva has and, the decently well-roundedness that he has. But up a weight division, the lightweight champion is Islam Makhachev, but not for much longer because he's vacating his belt to go up to 170 and fight Jack Della Maddalena. And technically, regardless, him vacating his belt is the way he's going to lose his title. But if he became double champion, I think we could all say that he technically didn't lose anything. But if he loses against JDM, then he's not going to be a champion at all. And that's what I think happens. I think he loses to JDM in a close fight. But what happens after that? Does he go back down to lightweight to get his belt? And him coming back down to lightweight to get his belt back? I don't know what's going to happen with that. But the next fighter we have up technically is not champion. He's in a similar situation to Islam Makhachev. It's Ilia Topuria. And we're going to break the rules a little bit because Ilia Topuria is fighting for the vacated lightweight belt in less than a month. And I'm so confident in Ilia Topuria beating Charles Oliveira. I think it's safe to say that he's the lightweight champion right now, or at least the disputed lightweight champion because Islam Makhachev's still around. So when does Ilia Topuria lose his belt once he becomes lightweight champion after defeating Charles Oliveira? And I think the way he loses his belt is to Islam Makhachev. But that's pretty dependent on if Islam Makhachev even ever comes back to lightweight. If he wins against JDM, I don't think he's ever coming back down to lightweight. But if that fight happens and Islam Makhachev comes back down to lightweight, I think there's a bigger chance than not that Ilia Topuria probably does lose to Islam Makhachev, if I'm being honest. The more and more I think about that fight, the more and more I'm kind of siding with Islam Makhachev. Unless there's other circumstances where maybe Ilia Topuria would have an advantage, I think I would slightly lean towards Islam Makhachev, and I think that's the way Ilia Topuria would lose the lightweight belt. If that fight never happens, I think Ilia Topuria retires undefeated and leaves the sport. I don't think anybody in lightweight other than Islam Makhachev can beat Ilia Topuria. But Merab's next, and his upcoming fight with Sean O'Malley is literally a week away. But I don't think he loses his belt to Sean O'Malley. I think he actually wins more decisively than the first time. I think the way Merab loses his belt is to Umar Nurmagomedov. And the reason I say that is because Merab is like 34 years old. He's leaving his prime, especially in a lower weight class like bantamweight. You exit your prime earlier than the other weight divisions typically. And considering Umar's not even 30 years old, he's the younger fighter, he has time to develop. Listen, the first fight was so close that if by the time the rematch happens and Merab's slightly older and slightly more out of his prime, but Umar is entering his peak and is making adjustments, I think it's pretty safe to assume that Umar could probably pull that one off. But DDP's next, and this is the fighter who I think loses his belt the quickest. I think he loses it to Khamzat. That fight's not too far away. It's in August, and I think Khamzat Chimaev actually does beat DDP. I haven't made my full prediction yet, but I'm leaning towards Khamzat Chimaev, and I'm gonna be honest, I think Khamzat Chimaev probably gets a first or second round finish. I think the grappling of Khamzat Chimaev is just too much for DDP. we've seen DDP against high-level fighters like Adesanya, who's a specialist in striking, but I think Khamzat Chimaev is a different level of specialist, and Khamzat Chimaev is in his prime. Adesanya had a lot of miles by then. He's had championship fight after championship fight. You can't say the same about Khamzat Chimaev, and I think he's going to be able to pull off this submission. At welterweight, we have Jack Della Maddalena, and I don't think he loses his belt to Islam Makhachev in their fight. But who does he fight next if he beats Islam Makhachev? There's no real answer, because the way the welterweight division is right now, there's so many contenders that have so many good wins. It's hard to pinpoint exactly who he's going to fight next. But let's go through the list of fighters. Joaquin Buckley. If he beats Kamaru Usman, I think he's deserving of a title shot. Does he beat JDM? I don't think so. I think JDM outboxes Joaquin Buckley. But what about Shavkat? Say Shavkat beats Bilal in their fight. Does he beat JDM? I don't think so. I'm pretty confident in JDM, and mostly because of the skill difference. I think JDM's a lot more skilled than Shavkat, and with all the durability and power Shavkat has, I don't think it's going to be enough to stop a guy like JDM. But what about Ian Gary? That's who I think JDM loses his belt to. You guys might think this is a joke, but I genuinely think the way this matchup is, I think that's who could take the belt off JDM. And the reason I say that is mostly because the type of fighter Ian Gary is, he's longer than JDM, and I think he can stay at distance and not really engage in the boxing of JDM, because I think if he tried to box JDM, he's gonna lose. But if he stays at range and uses his length and relies mostly on kicks like he does, I think he can outpoint JDM. You know, I'm not really worried about the ground game in this fight. I think it's going to be mostly on the feet. But if not, we've seen that, you know, Ian Gary can pretty much hold his own on the ground. So if Ian Gary's the next fight after Islam Makhachev, JDM may be losing his belt pretty soon. But up at light heavyweight, we have Ankalaev, and Ankalaev's next title fight's going to be against Alex Pereira most likely. But I don't think Alex Pereira wins that rematch, and I think a lot of people kind of agree now, especially with the way things are going. Alex Pereira has turned down, apparently, 3 fighting opportunities in the summer against Ankalaev. He's not getting any younger. In fact, he's almost 40 years old. And it doesn't seem like he's fully locked in. I mean, if you just base it off his Instagram, he's traveling the world all the time. It doesn't seem like he's too focused on this rematch, and especially the way the first one went. I don't think anybody's really confident that Alex Pereira is going to win against Ankalaev. But with the way the light heavyweight division is, if Alex Pereira can't do it, I don't think any other light heavyweight right now can do it. Some people say Yuri can beat Ankalaev. I don't think so. I know he's weird. I know he's unpredictable. I know his defense has apparently gotten better, but I don't think that's enough to beat Ankalaev. So who takes the belt off Ankalaev? I'm going to be honest. I think he either does not lose at light heavyweight, or it's kind of a Tom Aspinall situation where it's some contender who we don't know the name of yet. But the last person we have is Alexandre Pantoja. You know what? I said DDP's the first person to lose his belt. I was wrong. I think it's Pantoja. Pantoja's next fight is against Kai Kara France, and you're gonna have to bear with me on this one, but just based off the vibes, I think Pantoja's gonna get knocked out by Kai Kara France. I don't see Pantoja just like winning for years on end. I just can't imagine that happening. And Kai Kara France is the guy with knockout power. I can see him catching Pantoja. Pantoja's getting older too, and I can see him sparking Pantoja, and I kind of have a feeling that's going to happen. So I think Pantoja loses his belt pretty soon. And by soon, I mean literally in less than a month. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think some of these champions are going to last longer than I said, or do you think they're going to lose earlier than I said? Let me know in the comments below. If you guys like this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.